It's movie time, and we're back again with movie time. How are you all doing? Hopefully, you guys have had a fantastic couple of weeks. It's like I'm glad to be back and back on the mend. So hopefully everything is going well. And of course, we have our co-host today with us again, Olaf Barbosa. Hey, Olaf, how you doing?
I am doing great. So excited to be here. Yay! And it's like, and that you're back and on the mend and all that good stuff. And it's like, yeah, excited to talk about something. What? Oh, this. Wait, now we're actually going to talk to somebody today, right? This is not just you. This is not just you and me chatting, right? Oh, okay.
It's like basically also we have our incredible guest Suzanne Lyons. Hi, Suzanne.
Hey, hello. Hi. Good to be here.
Hi,
nice
Suzanne.
to be here in air conditioning. It's very hot in Burbank today. Really hot. Whoa.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's good to have you here today. It's like I was just teasing a little bit with you. I knew we were going to talk to you.
That's okay. I could sit and just listen to you guys. That's fun too.
So Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Oh my gosh. How long you have? It all started in a little town.
Yeah.
Right. Well, for me, I actually am from a very small town, Miramichi, New Brunswick, just a little, about 2 or 3 hours south of Quebec, north of Nova Scotia. In Canada, you'll probably start to hear some of the accent. Even though I've been in LA for, 20-some years, I still, everybody tells me, have an accent, Canadian accent. So my background was television. After I finished university, I went to broadcasting school, and then I worked for about 10 years in Atlantic Canada in television. As the VP of marketing and promotions for a television station and a television network there in Halifax, and then my husband and I moved to Philadelphia for a while, and then I worked as a sales agent for a sales agents company that did television and film international, and then we moved out to LA in, I think it was 93. We wanted to be here, for the earthquake, of course, so we came out in the fall of 93. Not that bright.
You just wanted to be somewhere where you could really shake things up, didn't you? You want to be there for the earthquake and really shake things up.
I want to let everybody know I'm here. Exactly.
Yeah, shake things up a bit, move with the time.
Yeah, it was so quiet out here at the time. Too steady. So anyways, my husband wanted to kind of go into the television world. He's a writer and showrunner for hour-long television. And I was going to pursue film. And I got sidetracked because what happened is I started as background in marketing and promotion in television. I started to notice how people were not marketing themselves in the entertainment industry, and it was driving me crazy. I'd noticed people who say, I said, oh my God, you should be doing this. You're such a great actress. Oh my, you should be in big movies and that sort of thing. And then they say, well, that's not my job, Suzanne. That's my agent's job. That's my, manager's job. That's my attorney's job. I found that people were kind of relinquishing their power, to people who had nothing to do with their lives. And I just couldn't grasp it. Why aren't you trying to get auditions or trying to get that television job or that makeup artist job or whatever? So it kind of made me crazy. I ran into a gal named Heidi Wall who felt the same way I did. She was an MOW TV producer, and she said it was driving her crazy too. Her background was the same as mine, marketing and promotion for television for years and years. So we teamed up and we started a company called Flash Forward Institute, which was very wonderful and very successful for about 10 years, which was teaching marketing and promotion to people in the entertainment industry. How do you get out there and literally pitch yourself? I'm not saying don't have an agent, don't have managers, and all that stuff is great. They have great letterhead, but it's up to you to really get out and make things happen and take control of your own life and your own, career and destiny. So that's what I did for 5 years, almost 5 years. And then I thought, you know what, this is kind of getting crazy. I'm spending so much time on this. I don't want to stop it, but at the same time, I need to launch my film company. And then one of my other dear friends from Philadelphia was wanting to do the same thing. So even though she was based actually in Delaware, She and I started Snowfall Films in '98, I think it was. And she's kind of gone back to her writing now, so she's not with Snowfall Films anymore. But we started, and kind of nice that we didn't know what the hell we were doing, to tell you the truth, because I think at that time, if I'd known,
Yeah.
I probably would have gone into dentistry or something,
Yeah.
or I don't know, anything, driving a snowplow, anything back in Canada. It's kind of like
Sometimes it's better
crazy.
sometimes it's better to not know what you're doing, and you can kind of learn.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I'd call, agents, like big agents at ICM, and they'd hang up on me, and I'm going, oh, okay, then maybe they're just having a bad day. So I'd call the next one. It never occurred to me that it was the fact that I said, hi, Suzanne Lyons here. I don't have any money, but I got a great project. I wondered why they slammed the phone. I couldn't figure it out. Literally many, many, many times this happened. So, but we just never gave up. And then, we had a coach, Heidi, who was my partner in my other company. She was our coach, Kate and I's career coach. And so I think it was in 2000, was it 2000 or 2001? She said to us, okay, girls, you've got 25 projects that you've developed and are, great. And Kate was a Chesterfield Fellow writer, so she was an amazing development person, a wonderful partner in that way as well. And so Heidi said, all right, I'm pinning you guys down. You've got to focus. You've got to pick one. Pick one project, for God's sakes. I think we had 26 or whatever. I can't remember. It was a crazy number at the time. And Heidi said, you've just got to pick one, Kate and Suzanne, just one. So we kind of looked them all over, and we looked at what was our favorite. And at that time, we picked a romantic comedy. And we said, okay, it was called Plots with a View at the time. Now it's called Undertaking Betty out there in the world. But we said, all right, let's pick that. It's fun. It's light. It's, great script. No changes made into it. It's just fantastic. Fully developed when it came right out of the writer's computer. And so we took it on, and that's when we started calling studios and agents and directors and all this great stuff. Didn't know what we were doing, got hung up on many times. But, once we focused, it really made life. So I swear to God, within, I would say 3 to 4 months of that focus, well, it was 3 or 4 months, because it was January of that year that of 2000, that we took, that Heidi was coaching us on this. We chose that project. And by March, we had our lead actor on board. And then within a couple of weeks of that, we had partners, British partners, because we decided to take it out of the U.S. and do it as a British project. Because what we noticed when we were dealing with the studios, as wonderful as they were, and they all would say, what are you pitching? And I'm saying, I'm pitching this great project. It's unique and unusual and distinctive and fun and interesting and funny and, different. And oh, Suzanne, that's exactly what we're looking for. Something unique and different and funny. And that's exactly it. Send it over. And I think we sent it to 44 different companies at the studios around town.
Wow.
And they'd call back 2 weeks later, or I'd call them, to follow up. I'm a big believer in you following up. Don't rely on them to follow up, right? And I'd call and I'd say, what'd you think? And they'd laugh. Oh my God, the best script we ever read. Oh my God, it was fantastic. We loved it. It's so funny. And I said, oh my God, you're signing it on? No, we're passing. No. I hold on. You just said you're passing, but you said it was, yeah, why are you passing? Well, it's too funny, and it's too unique, and it's too this, and all the things that they had asked for 2 weeks before, they were now passing for those same reasons. It took Kate and I months and months to figure it out, though, because what we realized is, oh my God, they love the project, but it's not based on a book. It's not a sequel to anything. These people really do, on a Monday morning, if the box office numbers are not great, they get fired. So they're terrified to say yes. Saying yes, it's much easier to say no and wait for something that already has legs to come along, right? So we got it. We got to get very good friends with many of these guys and gals, and we really got it after a while. So that's when we said, you know what? It doesn't have to be the U.S. I mean, it's about two competing undertakers in a small town. It can be anywhere. In fact, probably with that Welsh or British accent or even a Nova Scotia accent, it becomes funnier, you know? So the minute that we realized that, that's when we said, oh my God, it's British and it's Brenda Blethyn. And then that was on a Monday, the night after the Academy Awards, and by Friday we had Brenda Blethyn. And then those people that kept hanging up on me, the agents and the managers and the attorneys, all of a sudden, you know, took my call. It doesn't mean that she was the most giant marketable person in the world. You know what I mean? It's not like she was Tom Cruise, where, you know, the territory sales are going to be humongous. It wasn't that. It was just with that second Academy Award, you know, and it was obviously the same week as that second Academy Award. What that did is it just created that cachet, you know, that prestige, that class and sophistication that went with the film all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, when somebody shows, oh my God, it's credible, then it's much easier for other people to say, oh, it's credible. You know, do you understand what I mean? It's like, that's like, you know, it's not like just relying on their opinion. Somebody else said it's great, so therefore we better have a look. So then it was easy to kind of move from that to then getting our British partner, getting our sales agent on board, calling the agents and managers back, putting the team together, called the Miramax, I called all the heads of those companies, Kate and I, Sony, Picture Classics and everybody, and put Miramax on board, you know, shortly after. And you know, literally we were shooting in October, my birthday, October 7th of 2001. So within literally a very short time of us focusing on what did we want to do and not knowing kind of how we were going to go about it, it wasn't what I realize now in hindsight. It's not about the knowing. I just recently read again for the 100th time Napoleon Hill's book, and he talks about Henry Ford, you know, back then, and how he was actually on trial for not knowing all the aspects of his business. And he was doing a good business. Right. Henry Ford. He did okay, you know. But and what maybe that outcome, the outcome of that conversation, his trial, was that in what he explained to the judges, I don't need to know everything. Yeah. There's people on our planet who know. You know, so as long as you've got your commitment and you're standing for that and you've created a deadline and a timeline for yourself, then you put around you all the people that are magnificent in all the areas that you aren't. Right. Which is many areas in the case of Kate and I, because we hadn't done it before. But we weren't inventing the wheel. The wheel, I mean, it's been 120 years, people have done the films prior to us. So there were people out there, and we had mentors. You know, with the first thing I did, I'm the biggest believer, it's all over my book, get a mentor. You know, you don't have to, not in any industry in the world probably, do you have to reinvent the wheel. So get mentors. And we took them to lunch and breakfast, and we said, what did you do right and what did you do wrong? And how can we learn from that? And what help can you give us and that sort of thing? So that's, you know, literally from making that decision, a year and a half later, we were making a movie. And we didn't talk about it. Yeah. We took action immediately. That's the other thing I remember too, is people talk about making a movie for years and years and years and years. We said, okay, we're making it. We gave ourselves the deadline, and we were there. Year and a half later, we're in Wales, about a half an hour's drive from Cardiff, west of Cardiff, in a little town, shooting this movie with Naomi Watts and Chris Walken and Alfred Molina and Brenda Blethyn and Jerry Springer and Robert Pugh and Lee Evans, my favorite comedian. I mean, unbelievable. With the backing, you know, of Miramax as our domestic distributor when the film was done. So, you know, from not knowing anything to a year and a half later being on set and doing that, I learned a lot. I'm not saying it was easy. I'm not saying there weren't bumps in the road. I loved the bumps in the road. I learned from the bumps in the road. So that's kind of the beginning as a long answer to your short question.
Well, no, it's actually quite interesting because it's like you have worked also though now since then with studios, also internationally. It's like you've worked in Canada, the States, as well as in the UK, and all of that. How do you find that transitioning between all of them? That do you find that they find common model, or are there those subtle differences when you are working with the way that the systems are working in each of the countries?
Yeah, yeah.
Exist?
It is a little different, and you've got to kind of learn the ropes. Right now, obviously, China is the big one, for all of us. So, and it's a very different culture. Those meetings are very, very different. Creating those relationships really do take years. It's a whole trust issue going on, there. So it's quite different actually working with China at the moment. But to go back to what you said in terms of the UK and Australia and Canada and so on, it was a little easier back then because co-productions were very prevalent, because the UK, their incentives were phenomenal. As indie producers who did co-productions, which is how we started, we really relied on the UK, because the way their deals went is you could still get the 40%, but you didn't have to shoot on the British soil always necessarily. You could do your post in the UK, but shoot in Canada, for example, or South Africa or Australia, and you still got the 40%. And then when you go to Canada, let's just use Jericho Mansions, my next film, as an example. That was in my province, and we did a co-production and a co-production. So it was UK, Canada, and Quebec, New Brunswick. Okay, there was even a deal kind of going on between the provinces at that time in Quebec and New Brunswick. And given I was from New Brunswick, there was a lot of support to come home and shoot this. It was huge. It was New Brunswick's biggest film ever. And I think the budget was around 10 million Canadian at the time. So then that was about 30% in terms of the incentives at that time, maybe a little higher. And then you would do back then, what you did were pre-sales. Pre-sales where you could not possibly, I've done it, 500,000 from Germany back then on a pre-sale. You wouldn't even blink. 500,000 from 750,000 from the UK, 500 from the US. Italy, huge numbers, where then you would put that 20% together, or sometimes even higher of the budget. And then you would do, we all used Lou Horowitz back then, was your 10% bank gap, right? And then you'd make sure you held off on one of the big pre-sale countries to pay Lou back, that 10% shortly after, so you didn't have to incur any interest. But you still built that interest into your budget, of course, at the time. But anyways, so it was quite, I have to.
Yep.
Easy, not so hard, because like I said, we had pre-sales back then. Real pre-sales. You had great incentives. What happened, and so we did 3 movies in a row, literally 2001, 2002, 2003. And then I helped Untitled Entertainment. One of their actors, writer, producer, directors, was having some financial issues with her film. So then I came back and did helped with the funding for that film, which is called The Hardest Is Full. So what happened is England changed their laws in 2004 because they realized every other country that offered 25, 35, 45, 55, in the case of some places, percent tax credits, all these sales, all these benefits, the country, you had to shoot on their soil for 80%, 70%, whatever. So they changed in October of 2004. Their laws changed where we couldn't access those bigger numbers anymore. So we came back to the U.S. Our husbands lived here, so they're cute. So it was fun to see them again for longer periods of time. So what happened was the Directors Guild, unbeknownst to us, of America, for 6 years had been lobbying, that all this, but I don't know if all the listeners know, lobbying in Washington for 6 years to get passed in the Job Creation Act, Section 181. The same that England shut down, because we had 2 movies going in Australia, one in soft prep. Thank God it wasn't pre-production. 32 movies in Australia shut down that day. The world shut down that day. That is the end of our world. Yes. That day in October, UK, when the laws changed. It really affected all of our lives from the international co-producers' point of view, indie anyway. But what happened in America is with Section 181, it was fun to come home because any movie from $15 million, your investors were 100% 100% tax write-off. We hadn't had that since the 70s, I believe, in America, right? God, I don't even think we had it in Canada since the 70s. So it was a big deal, a big incentive to stop runaway production. But what it did also was fun for us as indie producers to come back. And I was living in Burbank, at the time, but mostly in Canada and the US and the UK, of course. But then it was great fun. And also at the time, digital cameras were becoming great. Two of the unions, 2 out of 3, the Directors Guild and the Actors Guild here, SAG, created a great incentive for you to shoot on American soil, where you could do what was called a SAG ultra low, where back then it was like for $100 a day you could have an actor. It was a win-win because we won as producers. We still got to produce here. And yet a lot of people, actors who maybe hadn't even acted much before, got to, create reels and makeup artists and all crews. You still had a crew of 70 or 80 people, but it gave everybody these possibilities to do more work in America. And so it was great fun. And the Directors Guild was wonderful too. They created an incentive where you could negotiate. You didn't have to pay those huge numbers. It was just the Writers Guild at the time that was, that didn't offer the incentives, but we were still able to do some movies with Writers Guild members. We just had to work with their attorneys to make that happen. But I think later on they certainly did make the changes that the other guilds did. So it was a real incentive to be here and shoot here. And with the digital camera, you could shoot movies for $200,000 that looked amazing. And we done some really fun films at that time, and some romantic comedies and psychological dramas and dramas, obviously, and a children's movie. But we hadn't killed a lot of people yet, and we thought this would be time, I think we were both starting menopause at the time, and the urge to kill was great, and so we decided, let's do that. Let's do some horror films. And Kate's husband is a giant fan of horror films, and she had written a horror film with her partner Jill Garson called Candy Stripers. It's so great. Oh my God, it was so much fun. It was the Candy Stripers in the hospitals, they were attacked by aliens who were hell-bent on breeding. So, it could happen. We don't know. Could be based on a true story from the future. Not sure. Anyways, it was lots of fun. And we kill everybody just about. I think we leave a couple people, for possible sequels. But everybody had to go. We even blew up the hospital at the end. That movie was $200,000, and you would not believe it. We had 150 extras. I think 2 or 3 sets of explosions. Unbelievable. But we were very creative by then in terms of knowing how do you blow up a hospital without the money. You use footage that costs $20, and you pretend that it's on a TV station, and it's on the background. So anyways, we just had so much fun, and we did those back to back as well. We did 3 in a row. Candy Stripers, Seance, and Portal, and then we exec produced another one right after that, A Desert of Blood. So it was very fun. I have to say, it was 3 or 4 years of having great fun doing the SAG Ultra Low. And what I realized is a lot of producers around the world were starting to take advantage of this new world, the SAG Ultra Low and the SAG Modified. But here's the problem, and here's what led me to write my book, is they wear the business creative hat. And I'd say to people, well, did you get your option agreement? And they'd say, oh, no, Suzanne, my God, it's my girlfriend. It's one of my best friends. I'm not going to have her sign it up. Suzanne, that would be rude. Well, that same person who said that 2 years later called me from Cannes crying on the phone saying, I've got a sales agent who likes my movie and wants to buy it, to take it out to sell, but she's asked for delivery, and one of the things on the delivery list is the option agreement. And I'm going, yeah, and did you not do it back then when I mentioned it? Well, no, I said it would be offensive to my girlfriend, so I just called her. She was over at Cannes at the moment, my friend. And she said, I called her, and she said, you know what? She said, I had a fight with the director on that movie because he made changes or did whatever, and as far as I'm concerned, that movie can burn in hell.
Oh.
So that movie burned in hell. Seriously. So that investors, they never recouped their money. I had another girlfriend who had no idea to do product placement, deals. So she had Coca-Cola cans everywhere. She had, license plate numbers, Toyota. Everything with no release forms. Never saw the light of day. 350,000 she got. Like I say to people, if it's your own visa, when people start arguing with me about this kind of stuff, about wearing the business hat, that's your first job. I'm not saying don't be creative. Of course you got to be creative. That's why we're all here, right? But business is business. This is a business. Show business. Do you notice the word show is only half the number of letters?
Yes. Exactly.
I figured that out by myself, and I can't even spell, and I figured that out. So in other words, it's an important word, business, So it just makes me crazy. And
yeah, like film industry.
And stopping for a while. Yeah, exactly. Industry is a big word. That's right. It's an industry, like the car industry. So I just became crazy. Like are you all crazy? What are you thinking? Oh, Suzanne, no, really. I'm the creative type. I'm not into the business stuff. I know I'm the producer. I'm the creative type. And I say, yes, sweetheart, if it's your own visa, you be as creative as you want to. Because that movie's never going to see the light of day. But if it's somebody else's money, I don't care if it's your mom's money, you don't get to play that game. You're a business person. You are the president and CEO of that company, which is that film. So if it's somebody else's money, business, business, business. You get the T's crossed, the I's dotted. You read my book, so I go through all of that. I went and read attorney books. I went and did what's the name? Oh God, not Lou Horowitz. I can't remember. I'm blanking. But there's an attorney course that we all do at UCLA. I'm blanking on his name. But anyways, he's got a great book. But I mean, I thought, you know what? I went and did a budget class. Not that I'm going to do budgets, but I want to know how to read. I did a course on boards. I wanted to know, how do you do the schedule on board? I'm not a line producer. I will never do a budget a schedule on board, but I want to know how to read that in case of an emergency, which I had on a few movies, by the way. And thank God I knew how to read those. So, I mean, I thought I want to know a little bit about this business, and especially the legal aspects. And we're not going to get in bed together until I know that the deal is signed. If you want to be my partner, or if you want to be the writer, I'm going to do an option agreement and have it signed. Then I'll start working on development. And the other thing I started to notice from the earlier movies is that timeline. And that's the other thing that people don't do, is create a timeline. Otherwise, you are a ship without a rudder. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you're out there sailing around, talking about getting to a destination. You'll talk about it till you're blue in the face, but you'll never get there without the rudder. So you've got to have that destination. Here's when I'm shooting, God damn it. July 1st, 2017. And if I need to move mountains to get there, so be it. And that's how a business, do you think, any business person would not do that? I say to people, the guy who owns a Toyota dealership down the street, he's going to say, oh, gee, let's get a bunch of cars in this year, and I hope they sell. Oh, gosh, it'd be fun by the end of the year to sell a bunch, wouldn't it? No, he's going to say, okay, we need to sell 50,000 in the next 5 months. How many is that per month? That's 10,000 in 5 months. What's that per week? That's 2,000. You know what I mean? Okay, if you do this many, then you do this many. You know what I mean? Like you set up your destination and your timeline of how we're going to get there. One thing Kate and I did wrong in Candy Stripers was we gave ourselves 3 months to raise the money. And it actually took 5. So we had to regroup. And that was because mostly of our own brain freeze. You know what I mean? It was easy dealing with governments and incentives and investment groups, where they were getting the big tax write-off and that sort of thing. All of a sudden, when you're talking to your dentist, you know what I mean? Talking to your dentist and asking for $7,500 for your movie, that's a whole new ballgame. So we set up our little timeline. And I had 110 stacks, beautiful stacks of my LLC packages with my PPM, private placement memorandum, operating agreement, subscription agreement, my little poster for Candy Stripers, lots of cleavage, lots of blood. All beautiful posters. On January 1st, they were all sitting there. And the next thing I remember is Kate and I were on the phone, and I remember looking at the calendar, and it was March 1st. And I screamed. And Kate said, what's the matter? Did somebody come in the office? I started screaming. She said, what's the matter? I said, Kate, it's March 1st. She started screaming. What the hell happened to the last 2 months? We literally went unconscious. My house probably looked amazing. God, I probably cleaned your house, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? I was like, I was unconscious because we didn't set up a timeline. Even though I teach that stuff, we didn't do it because, hey, we'd already done, come on, 4 movies, give me a break. This can be easy. We raised at that point, I don't know, 30 million. This can be a joke. But that was different. That was investment groups. That was with governments. That was with tax incentives. That was with Telefilm Canada. That's a different world. All of a sudden, you're asking your chiropractor, your dentist, your next door neighbor, maybe your kid's teacher, to invest in your film. So we froze. So what we did is we didn't ever make ourselves wrong. We did waste no time on excuses. We just said, okay, you know what? We messed up. Got it. Not a problem. No time to beat ourselves up. What we failed to do is a timeline. Brilliant. Okay, let's start now. That means we're moving from the 21st of May. Let's choose my mom's birthday, which was the 12th of July. So we chose the 12th. Not a big deal. Just 3 months off. That's all we missed, or 2 months off, I guess, right? 2 months. Missed a couple of months. Not a big deal. Just move that. Okay? Now, what do we need to do to correct that mistake? Great. Let's do a sales presentation. Let's do 2 sales presentations. Let's put our ass on the line. Let's stand up in front of 40 or 50 people and say, we're making a movie and this is when we're shooting. All of a sudden, the molecules shift in your body. It's like, holy shit, I'm responsible. Holy shit, I'm accountable, right? Especially when people start buying those units, those shares to your movie, you're making the goddamn movie. Am I allowed to swear?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
No, you're not.
Not
You cannot swear. It's not.
Can't? Not swear. I didn't swear. Because I make a sailor look good. You know what I mean? A sailor looks like Pollyanna around me. So I'll be careful.
Yeah, do not worry about that.
Okay, I'll make this kid friendly because I know there's a lot of young people out there trying to make their movies with care.
That's just as much as anybody else.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they're worse at it than we are, so you're fine. I just got to pick on you.
Oh, God. So the minute that we created that timeline and we set 2 sales presentations, one for the following Wednesday and one for the Monday after that, 2 evenings, all of a sudden it's like it became real. Yeah, you know what? Our ass is nailed to the wall here. It's like we're doing this movie and we're raising the $262,500, which is the other point I wanted to make is line producers say, okay, yes, your movie budget is $180,000, for example. Then people will go out and raise $180,000. What that doesn't cover is probably 15 or so thousand for your operating costs, initial photocopying, attorneys, that first $800 you have to pay back to the state, the accountant that's going to come up next year, middle of April, a lot of those kinds of costs, the wrap party, all those kinds of things I put in that. Doesn't cover delivery, which is around 10, 15,000. E&O insurance alone is 5 or 6,000. There's no E&O insurance in there. There's no delivery. You don't see a pan and scan on any line producer's budget. Doesn't exist. Delivery does not exist on a budget. So people don't know that, guess what? There's delivery. There's finder's fees, which now are called associate producer's fees. Years ago, we called them finder's fees, where if you're selling some shares for me, if you're helping selling some shares, introducing me to some of your, the people that might be interested, I want to pay you as my friend who's been introducing me to those people, a finder's fee. So we set money aside for all of those. Yes, the budget was $200,000. It was a SAG ultra low, but we still needed to do finder's fees and things like that, of course. And handle the future, the accountant a year from now, the accountant 2 years from now. What if no money comes in? You still have to pay your $800 in California for the state tax, right? So those kinds of things.
So how much, it's like, in other words, let me ask you this, in other words, where you say, okay, you have a $200,000 budget, and then you have all these other things that come into it. How much more should you allow? In other words, if you've got a budget, a $200,000 budget, these other things you're talking about, how much would you allow to make sure you had all that covered?
Well, now I would probably do it a wee bit differently. And also in my book, I made note to this as well. I need a pen. It's funny, I can't talk without a pen.
Yeah, it's like
so you don't contingency at that time. and you don't want to go over the SAG amount, right? Well, now it's 250. SAG, let's use it nowadays. You can say, but let's just go back to mine just because it's easier. It just changed there in July, right, to 250,000. Also, you can go a little higher because with SAG Ultra Low and SAG Modified, especially SAG Modified, I'm not sure about the Ultra Low, with diversity. You know, if you use diversity, all of a sudden 50% diversity can increase your budget quite dramatically on the SAG Modified. But let's just stick with the lower number, because I'm always encouraging people to go with a lower number, because sales are not what they used to be. You know, you'd always count on Japan for 50,000, for example, even if it was a horror film. Now you'd be lucky to get 5,000. You know, I mean, the times are changed. There's dramatic changes. So the lower you can do it, and there's no excuse not to, you know, because nowadays even your visual effects are a tenth of what they were 10 years ago. The cameras are far better for far less. Everything is far better for far less technologically now, right? So let's say if your budget's 200, so you go at 190, you get your line producer to ensure it's 190, gives you the 10,000 for your contingency. So I would add to that. Nowadays, what I didn't need years ago is social media. See, we didn't have social media. There was no Facebook, you know, in 2005 and 6 and 7. Facebook, there's the LinkedIn, there's the YouTubes, there's trailers that you do in advance now. Before, you never did a trailer. God, I remember walking down the halls of Miramax where, you know, they get up and close the door. God forbid you should see a trailer unless it was 4 or 6 weeks before the movie came out, right? It was all secretive. Now you do a trailer 2 years in advance. Nowadays, you build your demographic and your psychographic in order to ensure that you have sales agents and distributors interested. Or if you don't want to go that route anymore, we don't need to go that route anymore, then if you want to self-distribute, you've already got, through your own work on social media, you know, maybe 500,000 fans, 500,000 people that are interested in your project. And that's where you've got to think smart. The head of Richard, you know, who's got Stage 32, he's writing a book for the same company, same publisher, Focal Press, as me, where he's interviewed people on crowdsourcing. Not crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is the least important. It's crowdsourcing. Yeah. How can you be smart now at script stage to ensure those different psychographics? You know, I'm one of the people that has to read for Focal Press. We do each other's. So I got to read, you know, most of the book before he even started finishing the rest of it. And one of the things that was fascinating is somebody was doing a movie and they decided to put in, I can't remember it exactly, but let's say it's somebody who's raw vegan, for example. And that's a huge demographic, or vegetarian, or, you know, an allergy to such and such. All of a sudden, it started a chat online with all these. So they had like an extra 200,000 people in that vegan vegetarian community that they could go to next year. You know what I mean? But that was put in the script on purpose now, right? Before they shoot. Mm-hmm. So you think of those kinds of things. Now, what can I do now? So I got off track there for a second, but no, we can come back to it. But so social media I would put in. I would probably allow maybe 5 or 10,000. There's few people that are educated yet on how to guide you in that realm of social media. It's a new world. It's only 3 or 4 years old in terms of consultants. Also, you do a website nowadays. You do your Facebook nowadays. You know, build a trailer, all of that stuff. The other thing is I would put in your own money that you will need for the future, you know, like that accountant, like that possible state taxes, like attorneys for the future, pending whatever may happen, all of that stuff. So I would probably add 10,000, you know, to that, 10 or 15. Delivery is not, years ago I always put 20,000 delivery. It's less now because so much is asked for through your computer. So much is done online. But years ago, you know, when people said to me my first time, you know, where's your pan and scan? I'm going, what the hell's a pan and scan? You know, I had no idea what the hell pan and scan was, right? I didn't know. I had done only movies that were 5 to 10 million. I had people who looked after that for me. Now, I was the post-production supervisor, right, on the little movies. What the hell's a pan and scan? And then they'd ask for, we need an HDD5, and we need a digibeta. And by the way, we need a clone of your HDD5. What the hell's a cologne? I thought a cologne was something that happened to sheep in Scotland. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't know what these things were. And so, well, I'll tell you what it is, Suzanne. A Pan Scan is around $2,000. Digibeta is going to be, $500 plus a clone, $500. An HDD5 is going to be $600 plus a clone. Like, all of a sudden, they started giving me these numbers, and you need E&O insurance. I said, oh, well, we have film insurance. Not film insurance, E&O insurance for your domestic distributor. Mm-hmm. What the hell's that? Well, it's around $5,000 or $6,000. What the heck? Like, that's when I said, holy God. That's why I say to people, you've got to make friends and talk to sales agents a year before you make your movie. Not just to find out what actor is good for which territory and how to be smart about it. Yes, of course, that's critical. But I want to see a delivery list. That's the first thing you ask for is, could you please send me a copy of a delivery list? So I'll know what I'm in for, and then get some help adding up those numbers. If it comes to numbers 15,000, there, to answer your question, there's another 15. So add that up. When Kate and I added that up, it was approximately 50,000. All the different aspects back. It's plus your finder's fees if you're going to be having people on board. And I never got that concept. I thought, I got to do this. In this industry, well, I'm a lone ranger. I don't know what it is about this industry that I got to do that, and I got to finish the script on my own, I got to do this, and there's nobody to help me. We have this Lone Ranger mentality, in this industry. Crazy. God put what, 7 billion on the planet, right? People right now in Hollywood alone, we've, I don't know, probably half that. And in the industry, probably half again. So everybody on the planet probably has a screenplay. So, but anyways, what's so fascinating is we don't have to be a lone ranger, So when Kate and I were not having that much success right away, with selling our units, when I had said, we were selling 35 units, and we started screaming that day on March 1st, all we had sold was 2, and that was to each other back in the fall, right? So it was like pretty scary. So, but within a couple of weeks of the presentations, we had sold a lot more, but then we went from 2 to 22 actually within 3 weeks. But what we realized is we don't have to do this on our own. One of our friends, on Broadway, her assistant wanted to be in the film industry, and he knew everybody, who invest in Broadway plays. And he said, oh, this would be great fun to go out. And then we found another friend who had an assistant at the time from Broadway. So, and then there was another friend of ours who said, oh my God, I'd love to get involved. So we met their friends and their investors and got to know them. And so all of a sudden it became very easy. And we ended up, like I said, selling the rest of the units in no time at all. Like 2.5 months after that March 1st, we were good to go. But there was those finder's fees, or what you'd call associate producer fees nowadays, or exec producer fees. So I would look at that. Did I give you, I think, four different categories I gave you?
Yes.
So, but just be smart about that. You have to, what would a business person do? That's the thing, is you've got to start thinking like the guy who owns a Toyota dealership down the street. You're no different. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, but then I'm of things like that, And what I would do is I would interview people. Like, I would volunteer for any organization where I could step in, and I need to a panel. I can't remember which company I went to. It wasn't Women in Film. Maybe the producers. I don't know. I moderated a panel of entertainment attorneys. So I got to ask the questions I wanted to ask, which I know would still serve the audience for the first half, and then the audience opened up for their questions. But I wanted to know, I did that a lot, in different regards, where I would kind of just get smart about sort of thing. Not that I needed to do my own contracts. Obviously, I try to do my own contracts, and then I get an attorney. That's the other thing. I don't necessarily get an attorney to do up a deal memo that's going to cost $5,000. I'll do it up myself, and then I give it to him and pay for the hour. The $400 for the hour versus the $5,000. But think, like, how can I save the money? But at the same time, like that.
Isn't it Mark Litvak?
Yeah, that's it, Mark Litvak. That was it. That's the attorney, good girl. That was him. Yeah, his course was fabulous. Thank God for that course. Yeah, because you got to learn how to read too. Our first movie, we didn't rely on that. We relied on our attorneys, and there was a lot of mistakes. You've got to learn how to read. This is your baby. This is your baby for life.
Well, you have to be involved in all of the aspects of it. It's like having your hand in there. You also speak a lot about being accountable, both in your book as well as also in the courses, like making sure that you're staying accountable to somebody and to yourself. It's
Yes.
so let's talk a little bit about accountability, because it also might go to what kind of person you like to work with.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Because I've been kind of bit, in the bum a few times by not having partners who have those same distinctions. You've got to, that's why it's so important to read. I'm reading Creativity Inc. right now. I finished it and I'm going to read it again. You got to read those kind of books by these magnificent people, not just from the entertainment industry, obviously, the president of Pixar, it's an amazing book, but, read those kinds of books, or even Napoleon Hill or any of those kind of books on what do business people do. I just did a Thinking into Results, a Bob Proctor course, a 3-month course. Like, how do you continue to think? Because I know as creative people, I know we use it as an excuse, but it's not if you're going to be doing the business of business, right? So how do business people think? One of the distinctions, obviously, is they're accountable. Lucas and Spielberg were each other's mentors, for God's sakes. They probably still are. When I first said I wanted to get a mentor, people laughed at me. I remember somebody on a panel I was on a lot of panels in the early days too. And I remember saying, one of the things Kate and I are looking at now is going out and getting a few mentors for our movie. And one of the women, literally, when it was a studio gal, she said, "Oh, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's a waste of time." And it's been the most important aspect of my career, I think, and my students' careers as well. It's, you've got to look at what are other people in the business doing that are successful. Look at successful companies and find out what are what are those distinctions. One of the most important distinctions is responsibility and accountability. And I have worked with people who said, "Yes, Suzanne, I'm going to call you tomorrow morning at 9. No call comes in. No call comes in. Call at 9:30. And I'm thinking, okay, if there's no respect for my time and and they're obviously no respect for their own, because they have no distinction accountability, no distinction integrity, no distinction responsibility, life does not occur in a vacuum. Yep. So if it does not occur in a vacuum, how are they being in other aspects of their life when it comes to, and their career, when it comes to the distinction, responsibility, integrity, and accountability? If you're not keeping your word with me, you're not keeping your word with anybody, let alone yourself. So do I want to play with you? I don't think so. I want to play with somebody who's accountable, who's integrous, who's Kate and I had to call each other every day. And I'm not telling you that I'm some saint. You know what I mean? When it came to calling the hard calls, those tough calls in the early days, shit, I would try to leave it to lunchtime when I knew they weren't going to be there and leave a message. You know what I mean? Calling the studios. Or if it was a really hard call, I'd leave it till 5 o'clock and then I'd say, "Oh, Kate, you know what? I got to leave. Got to get home." So what we started to do is I heard the Kennedy quote, when Kennedy was a little boy, he and his friends were trying to get over the fence. Do you remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
No? Yeah, trying to get over the fence, and they couldn't get over the fence, and they tried to get over the fence, and they couldn't get over the fence, and they tried to get over the fence, and they couldn't get over the fence. So finally he took off his hat, and he threw it over the fence. So when I heard that, Kate and I started to say, okay, if I don't do that cold call, by the end of the day, Kate, I owe you $20. Sometimes I had to put something at stake. I had a student in my class one time who made a promise to me that he would write his sitcom as his 1-month goal. And he came in halfway through the 2 weeks, and he had some fabulous excuses. Everybody in the class bought it except me. Whole 100 people sitting there. He's going, "Oh, my wife was sick." He was going on and on and on. And I don't listen to one thing, not ever, right? No excuses for me. And everybody, "Oh man, yeah, I get it. You couldn't write anything. I get it. You're going to have to change your goal." And I looked at him and I said, "What color's your car?" And he said, "Red." I said, "My favorite color. What year is it?" And he told me it was many years newer than mine. I said, "What kind?" He said, "Toyota, Honda." I said, "Ooh, I'd like to have a Honda." And and you could tell everybody froze, and he froze. And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You made me a promise. You said that 2 weeks from now, which at the beginning was 4 weeks, you would have that sitcom written, and you haven't done a page. You come in here 2 weeks from now. If I don't get that, I get the keys. And he started to cry, and everybody was all upset. And then they started siding with me. They looked at me and went, you know what, you're right. Sometimes we need to take a stand, and we need to put something at stake to get us over that hill, right? Mm-hmm. And he came in that last night literally waving the sitcom and got a standing ovation from the entire room. And he cried again. Everybody started to cry, I think, at that point. I'm going to cry again. I mean, it was so moving. But sometimes, and I'm not saying take actions when you're not inspired. I did not say that. I want you to only take inspired actions. And if you're in a slump, all I'm saying is start to notice if you're going down the rabbit hole, and then call your coach, call your accountability partner, call somebody and say, I'm going down the rabbit hole. I didn't do my calls today. I don't feel fun about doing it. I want to get that joy. I want to get that excitement back again. What's missing? And then create on the phone with your partner or your committed listener or your coach a conversation for possibility. Why did I get into this industry in the first place? Why do I want to make this movie? Should I produce this movie and work with those great stars? What could that make possible that's not yet possible in my life? Mm-hmm. How can I empower people around me by getting inspired? What's it going to take? So it means a conversation for possibility. Like I used to tell my students at the end of the Sunday night and flash forward, guys, I know you're excited. I know you've got great goals. And I got to tell you, and I know you're super, super, super thrilled to get out there and make stuff happen and start those calls tomorrow morning. And everybody had to have a committed partner, obviously a coach. We had many lines of accountability and flash forward. And I got to tell you, by the time you get from here to your car, it's gone. It's gone. Because the identity that's running the show for you, very, very little in life do we stand in commitment in life, right? We're always, the suck is, and the pull is the identity. Remember that time when you were 3 and your dad said you couldn't do it? Remember when you were 5 and your teacher said you're not as smart as your brother? Don't you remember that? Don't do it. Raising 250,000, who the hell do you think you are? Raising 5 million? God, you couldn't even sell Girl Guide cookies for the love of God in grade 2, girl. Get a grip, eh? That's from the time from like you left the seminar to get to your car. Your identity has stepped in and taken over. So you got to have a committed listener. You've got to have an accountability partner. Left to our own devices, left to my own devices, I'll find a back door when there isn't one. Yeah. So, I mean, there's no way we can rely on it because the suck is the identity, all the things we think we cannot do. And I'm not saying to beat yourself up when that happens. Hell, I've been down the rabbit hole more times than I care to imagine. But for the last 30-some years, as I've been a coach for 32 years, I have Kate, I have Barbara Dowse, who's my coach. I have a lot of accountability partners. And I make sure the partners that I team up with have those same distinctions that I do. Or I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play. Life's too short. I want to have fun. We entered the entertainment industry. None of us are curing cancer. Yes, do our movies create the kind of joy and laughter that can probably help cure cancer? Of course. But we're not scientists. We're not out there doing anything that's impossible, that's crazy. We are having fun. We are in an entertainment industry, thus the word entertainment. We're here to provide laughter. We're here to provide emotion and tears and inspiration and scare the shit out of people when we want to, too, for fun. And just have it's an entertainment. And yet we get crazy serious. And we just get like all balled up in the fear of it all, when we should be the ones having fun, given we're creating fun. So, we kind of have to lighten up a little bit, get great partners, like-minded people, be mindful. Obviously, take on, the distinctions that are going to make you more powerful. be empowering to people. I have every set I've been on, including I think it was Chris Walken. I think when I was meeting with Tony at ICM, sorry, afterwards, his agent, she was just saying how he said it was one of the best experiences ever. Alfred Molina said, I mean, I can tell you so many actors who have said that because we have fun on the set. You know, everybody's having a good time. Nobody's we're not crazy. You know, you've got to rise above. Don't get involved in people's drama. You know, I say to people, you don't get to complain to anybody unless the person who is in charge of that. You know what I mean? You don't get to chat and make gossip and complain to other people in your department unless it is the head of your department. You know, otherwise it's a waste of time. So, you know, create some like fun playground for people. We're in a playground. You've got a sandbox in that playground. You want to invite people to come play with you. People say, how could you raise so much money over all those crazy films? And I think it's because when Kate and I were standing at the front of the room in our sales presentations, as much as we're wearing the business hat, we were people that people wanted to play with. Do you know every single one of the investors in those low-budget movies are in the movies? They wanted to come out and be extras. One of the guys and his son, we killed him multiple times and just changed his hair color and threw him in and killed him again.
Well, isn't that kind of a bad thing, though? If you keep killing your investors, eventually they're not going to invest in you anymore.
Exactly. They had so much fun. Everybody had so much. It's so true. We had a ball. They had a ball. And, I mean, really a ball. So that's what it's all about too, is really having some fun with it. Be a business person, be accountable, keep your word. You know, the other thing too is because I'm not good at any of those things, what Kate and I did with one of our coaches is we took on a different distinction every couple of months, because I noticed when I would start to slip from integrity, you know, and like I said, life doesn't occur in a vacuum. And like integrity, it's like being a little bit pregnant. There's no such thing. If you're out, you're out, right? So, you know, when we found ourselves slipping in different distinctions like that, which we do, we're human. Of course, we've got the suck of the identity, right? And the pull back to that. So what we did is we would take on that distinction for a month or two and just start to notice it, not beat ourselves up, just start, oh, you know what? I was a few minutes late for that. Oh, got it. Interesting. Okay, not going to beat myself up. Just next time, leave a few minutes earlier. Got it. Okay, you know what? I didn't find myself very powerful on that call. The person wasn't enrolled in who I was being and what I was selling and what I was trying to have fun enrolling them in. You know, because after a few calls like that, if all of a sudden nobody's interested, it's never over there. It's never over there. Ever, ever, ever over there. It's always in who you're being. Always who you're being. Not even what you're saying. It's who are you being when you're making that call. You know, if you're not having fun and enrolling people into playing with you, so it's not fun. So we took on the distinction enrollment. We took on the distinction responsibility, integrity, alacrity. That's another big one. You know, how am I going to run the room for the sales presentation? You know, is it going to be messy? We made sure that the assistants were dressed up as much as we were. You know, you're representing this movie, you know, Candy Stripers or whatever. So you're going to look professional. It's a business. Like, we made sure that we had the posters on the room. Everything was perfect. I did a logistics list, which is in my book, and people laugh at me. I teach at Columbia College here, and people laugh. They say, oh, Suzanne, come on, we don't need a logistics list for doing a sales presentation, because it said, you know, don't forget your pens, don't forget your posters. I said, oh, yeah? You know, you want to be there the night of, and you're greeting people, you're ready to greet people all dressed up as they come in the door, potential investors, and you can't find the pens. Oh, you forgot the posters, and then you become frantic, and then you're hyperventilating, and I got to run back to the office, and now you're sweating, and then you get in front of the room like that. I ain't investing in your movie. No way. So, you know, all those little things, we just looked, where were we falling short, and what distinction do we need to put into place to be able to master that? Or at least get some mastery over that. You'll never master any of it. I'm sure when I'm 105 on my deathbed, I'm still going to be looking for distinctions of mastering, I don't know, integrity. You know, it's always going to be there. And keep reading these wonderful inspirational books and keep doing my meditation, you know. Well, maybe 110. Let's give it a few extra years. I feel good.
Yeah, you might as well go for broke, yeah.
Yeah, building a bonus prize.
What's that?
I said 325. It's like I told my husband it's like 325 years, and then we start assessing our like marriage and stuff like that.
Good. Exactly. That's right. Very good. Very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's like neither one of us gets to die on the other. 325. No, not before the review.
Exactly. No. Say it again. What was the last thing I missed?
I said not before the review. 300.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. That's good. I like that. Very cool. Oh.
And one of the coolest things also, though, is like you were also talking about marketing, promotions, campaigning, and stuff like that. That's also changed also over the years as well, because now we have to be part of the P&A chain as much as the distributors have to be part of the P&A chain. How do you feel that has evolved in terms of also getting out the proof of concepts and being able to do the marketing for it?
Yeah, that's another arena that you've got to be smart about early on. Because I started in co-production, I think I had a little bit of an edge in that regard, because in co-production, you had to think of who's selling what territories, like with Jericho Mansions. Obviously, you still need your big American name, a lot of the time. That was James Caan. In that movie, and then but Canada, so who were some great Canadian actors. One of the people that was on my list, I also have my own personal list, by the way, was Geneviève Bujold, who I've wanted to work with all my life. So that's an amazing, opportunity in terms of sales for Canada. Jennifer Tilly, another great friend. That's great Canadian sales. From Spain, equal to our Julia Roberts at the time in Europe was oh my God, Maribel Verdú. Very difficult to get because she wasn't working outside Spain. She didn't need to. She was huge. That huge Spanish movie had just come out where she was, gigantic. But she happened to be a big fan of James Caan, thank God. So with James's name, we were able to get Maribel Verdú. So I early on always had to think. Same thing with my very first movie. I knew I needed the American. And Chris Walken, and Naomi, obviously, for other territories, certain territories. And then Brenda, obviously for the British territory. So I was always having to think in that regard. Early on, that's just the way we were taught, even by sales agents back then. Very first thing we did when we knew we wanted to be producers was we went to AFM and we met every sales agent on every floor. Obviously they call security a couple of times, but we got to shake their hand before they call security. But I wanted to know that world. What's the world? And if I'm going to play inside that world, right? And so the same thing with marketing. Now with this becoming something new in these last 4 or 5 years, I need to know a little bit more about that world. So what I realized is, let's just go back 2 movies ago, Most Likely to Die. It was another horror film that we did with MarVista Entertainment. And so we looked at, when we sat down and kind of looked at the whole marketing element, do the same things I did back then, except nowadays, instead of maybe looking at Spain, for example, or Germany or Italy or whatever the different territories are, especially the bigger territories like Germany, what's going to sell from a YouTube point of view? How can who's big on YouTube? Who's big on social media? So we looked at who is the biggest star on YouTube at the moment, and that was who would be great in the movie, great age, great everything. He hadn't done the acting yet, but it was we knew he could. Anyways, he was phenomenal, by the way, in the movie. Perez Hilton, with 10 million hits, one Twitter from him, and all of a sudden it would be like having your star from Germany years ago in a co-production. Is that clear? And then obviously somebody from the television world, because television is bigger than film around the world a lot of the times, right? In those territories, during a TV sale, most of the time your sales agent, it's not that in Japan, for example, or wherever, or Germany. So you've got to be thinking, okay, who's the feed, but also who's the feature person? Because domestically, we look at that's the star. So who was that feature person? So we did that. We put, Jake Busey in for the feature person at that budget. We did Heather Morris from Glee, the beautiful blonde girl from Glee. We did Perez, like I said, from the YouTube, from the internet. So we have to think of what are all those different things. Now, of course, in some cases, you know, I mean, you obviously want the best person too. But if there's 10 great people who your director and your sales agent are looking at, and, you know, 5 of them have better numbers, maybe online, then they're all equal, all 10. They could all do the role equally. And some of them have better YouTube numbers or online numbers or whatever, or they're great at social media, or they're out there doing podcasts or whatever. Then there's a better likelihood that I might choose that person today than I would 10 years ago. You know, so I have to be thinking, so it's not, even though I still have to keep my territory sales in mind, it's a little different now that I have to think, okay, who's that social media person that I'm thinking of now too at the same time. So I have to do that. You know, that's something I need to be smart about. Now, I'm not saying you can't hire people around you who are also good at doing the website and the trailer and, you know, and how can I get out there and get myself on Facebook more. And we hired on our last movie, Time Toys, our children's movie with Mark Rossman, we did hire a social media gal. And she kind of made sure that she was doing all those little clips. See, before you think, oh, wow, I can do something that's, you know, making of, that's 20 minutes. God, now you're lucky to get somebody's attention for 90 seconds. 30 seconds. She was doing clips for 90 seconds and 30 seconds. And I'm going, geez, what's that about? And she said, Suzanne, it's called social media. 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 60 seconds. Nobody wants a making of movie anymore that's 20 minutes long, you know? So I was learning a lot from her, watching her during the shoot as well. So there's people out there you want, and also look at Stage 32, look at Now Casting, look at you know, the independent film producers. I mean, there's so many workshops online now that you can take in this regard. It's not like years ago where we'd have to do a weekend or a whole course at UCLA or wherever we are, but now it's all available. And I'm not saying get yourself crazy with education, but know that world. Even if you're hiring somebody, know that world.
Right.
Did that answer the question a bit?
It does, okay. Actually. And it's like knowing where you're going with it, and because you have to be part of it. Now you have to be part of it in the wheel. You can no longer just be the wheel.
That's right. That's right. I know.
Right.
Years ago, it might have been harder because you had to raise more money to make movies. They were in the millions, not in the hundreds of thousands. But at least you had kind of one job, which was more of that creative job, right? And you'd hire all those other people. Now it's like you're wearing a lot of hats, but you don't get the right to take any of them off either. You know, you got to know your world.
Right.
Yep. And so also is the financing structure, or do you feel, has it shifted towards a better way or a different model in terms of that? Because it's like now also the way that with tax incentives, it's like it's still balancing if 181 is going to stay here. It still is balancing now with this whole, and I promised I wouldn't say it, but we'll say it anyways, Brexit is going to this whole entire thing. It's like with Canada. It's like with having a new government change in power there, it's going to affect what the sort of tax incentives are we looking at one way or the other between provinces. As the debt is going higher, you have to cut from somewhere, so the incentives will be cut accordingly.
Exactly.
So how does that change our financing models?
Well, once again, we just need to get smarter. You know, I've never kind of buy into anything affecting me. You know, like when people said we're going through a recession at one point, I think it was 2008, 9, 10, I'm going, I'm not. You know? So it's like, so once again, it's like, yes, that's the conversation out there. That doesn't mean we have to buy into that conversation. My partner said the other day, he said, well, you know, given you're Canadian and we're working on a really great project, actually, phenomenal project, holy God. Whoa. The budget's around $5 million, and he's going, Suzanne, maybe we start looking at Canada more. And, you know, because some of the incentives are higher, and then you've got telefilm, and you've got this. And I'm going, yes, maybe that incentive could be higher. Like I'm just going back to Nova Scotia 2 years ago or a year ago, whenever. We had a project going there. And all of a sudden, some new government came in. And the tax incentives went from 45 to 25. First of all, they went from 45 to 0 and then back to 25. So I said, you can't ever rely on anything like that, right? And same with telefilm. You know, it means going through a lot of applications and then you may be rejected or, you know, or whatever, or writer's American. That could be an issue that we have to overcome. And therefore we're tied to, you know, this point system and that sort of thing. I said, so, you know, maybe we should look at what are some other arenas? There's more money on planet Earth than we have ever had before. I just finished Tony Robbins' book for the second time, Money. If you haven't read it, you gotta read that one. It's phenomenal. Thank God for audiobooks, because that's how I spend my time in the car. There's going to be more billionaires. Like in the next 10 years than in all of history combined. That quick. I mean, it's just quadruple. The word isn't even quadruple. That's how big it is. So there's so much money, and so many people are done with the real estate. They've been there, done that. What's great about our industry is it's sexy. You know, it's a place that people want to play. It's got this cachet to it. Everybody would love to have an exec producer credit on a movie. There's something very enticing and intoxicating about the film industry. We've all grown up with it. We all have our memories from those movies that we saw as children, and it's a big part of all of our lives around the world. And there's a lot of people out there who want to get involved. I'm dealing with 3 different investment groups right now. One of them doesn't even talk to you unless your movie is over 25 million. You know, another doesn't talk to you unless it's over 10. And then there's one that I'm working with right now, thank God, that's one. I have a project at 4 million and another at 5 that we're working with them on. So there's investment groups out there. You know, there's all kinds of other ways. There's China, for God's sakes. There's India. You've got to be smart. That's the other thing too, I find, especially in Hollywood. Boy, I had a hard time when I started teaching this class with people here, because they just saw within the borders, kind of like your news, you know, like the American news. There's something happened in a country called Canada? Where's Canada? You know, honestly. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but that's how, I mean, probably every country is is like that. Our news kind of stops at the border, you know? So we are, even in the entertainment industry, we're thinking domestic. And I'm going, gals, have you partnered up with anybody in China yet? Like, are you in relationship with people in India or Canada now with a decreasing dollar, or South Africa, for God's sakes? You know, I mean, are you at least looking into things like this? And people would say, no, like, why? I mean, it's like you've got to be thinking internationally. It's such a changing, fluid industry now. It didn't used to be. Before, it was all about shooting on, Hollywood movies, and we need to show Americans, and we need to even show them in a certain way, and all of this sort of thing. And now it's like movies are shooting everywhere around the world, and winning, Academy Awards. So it's changing dramatically. Are we with the changes? Are we being smart about that shift, that paradigm shift that's taking place, before us, or not? And that's, I think, with financing, you just got to start to be smart. If you're not smart in that arena, not a problem. What you do is what I did years ago, is you call Women in Film, or you call the Producers Guild, or any SAG, anybody, any organization, or start your own, doesn't matter, and offer to moderate a panel. And then you'd get to bring in these people. And that's why I did that a lot of times. And then I would bring in these people when I wanted to do bigger budget. I moderated a panel for 6 producers who do movies over 100 million. Mm-hmm. And it was, for the Producers Guild, it was like 250 people. It was incredible. But I got to be on their playing field. I'm in the green room with them, making them all feel comfortable. So I'm on their playing field with them, even though I wasn't even near them, right? And then I got to ask these questions where I got to be smart about what does it take to do a movie over 10 million. I'd never done anything over 10. And then I kind of got stuck in this SAG, ultra low SAG modified for a while. So I'm thinking, okay, what do I need to do to jump the fence here, And so I started to get smart in that arena. So in this case, maybe you talk to people who are working with investment groups. You put together a panel. You bring in some of the people from the studios. You do whatever it takes to kind of get a little smart in that arena. But never, ever, ever buy into a conversation that is not empowering. What I say to people is, if this conversation is not empowering you, like, let's say people say, oh, well, there's going to be a recession, and then the new government, and then, the Canadian dollar's higher, so how are we going to get money here? And then and all this stuff. Then just, say you've got to go to the washroom and leave the room. You know what I mean? And never talk to them again. Because if it's don't hang with those people.
Yeah, the negative doom and gloomers.
If it's disempowering. What's that?
The negative doom and gloomers.
Yeah, exactly. So just, and if all of a sudden it does get to you, notice that it gets to you. Notice that you're being disempowered and you're feeling a little low. And then say, okay, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but I'm not buying into it. Thank you very much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create ways to have conversations for possibility that will lead me down another tunnel where there's cheese down that tunnel, because there ain't no cheese down the tunnel you're going. And I'm not going there, you know. And if it means getting a mentor, you know, the first thing I did when I wanted to work on movies that were bigger, as I looked at who were other people that I respected, who had done some movies that I loved, that were doing the big budget movies. And I requested a mentor. Now, please, before you request a mentor, watch my YouTube. I have 126 YouTubes called the 10 Tip series. And one of them is on, 11 or 12 different 10 tips. I forget what they all are, but they equal about 126 videos. One is on getting a mentor, because there is proper etiquette to getting a mentor. If I say to you, I really admire what you're doing and you're producing movies, and I would love to do that. Would you be my mentor? What it sounds like to me is I've got to look after you for the rest of my natural life, right?
Yeah.
Coffee meeting or 10-minute conversations on the phone, something specific and measurable that, you know, they know it's a business relationship and it ends at the end of that particular business agreement, right? That half-hour coffee meeting or whatever. First thing I did is I called Michelle Shane, who I totally respected, and I said, Michelle, I would love to take you to coffee. It'd be just half an hour, and I would love to, you know, ask a little bit about what it was like doing the movies that were, you know, in the hundreds of millions kind of thing, you know. And he said, oh, well, that's great, Suzanne. I've been meaning to call you too. And I'm going, excuse me? Yeah, really? He said, yes. He said, I'm Canadian, which I don't think I realized at the time. And he said, I know you're one of the founders of Canadians Abroad here in Hollywood. And my wife and I would like to be members. And I know we need to get, you know, registered by somebody. I went, okay. So we had this great coffee meeting. We ended up partnering on 2 projects, by the way, and it was amazing. So we've got this incredible friendship, and even to this day, I'm doing a book option at the moment. So I had a question about it. I'd never done an actual book option, so I called him the other day and asked for help. I said I just need 5 minutes, and he gave it. And then there's times when one of my mentors, Pendention, a couple years ago, he was doing something that was low budget, if you can imagine, you know, after all of his giant movies, and he and his son took me to lunch to kind of get some ideas on how to do the low budget world. So after him being my mentor for years, I was then his mentor, and we've still done it both ways now. Pendention, you know, so the president of Trilogy for all those years. So a lot of times you have no idea how sometimes it even ends up being a two-way street. But the thing is, set the parameter, whether it's a lunch, a breakfast, a coffee, 3 phone calls, 10 minutes each, exactly 10. Call when you said you'd call, finish when you said you'd finish. Don't ask them to read your script. Don't ask them to look at your reel if you're a composer, or listen to your reel. Watch your reel if you're an actor. If they request it, that's fine, but don't ask. You know, they're not a coach. They're not like my coach Barbara, who, you know, she's there to kick my butt, or your accountability partner, who's there to kick your butt, right? No, a mentor is not. They're an advisor. They're not a coach. So please watch that. I have a whole ton of YouTubes up there, so take advantage of those. In my book, I don't have a copy here. I just have the picture of it. It's with Focal Press. Taylor and Francis is the company that owns the Focal Press. And it's indie film producing, the craft of low-budget filmmaking. And what it does is it takes you through optioning the screenplay all the way to delivery and taxes and getting an accountant, all the way through. And I've broken it down into little pieces, because making a movie is kind of like a New Year's resolution. I think this year, you know, at January 1st, you'll hear somebody, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. All of a sudden, that's daunting. That's impossible. I cannot do that, somebody would say. Are you out of your mind? 30? So what happens is then, you know, we go to the bakery. You know, it's like right away, it's gone. It's not doable. Our brain can't get a hold of something that big, for example, for somebody with 30 pounds. What you need to do is break it down. Okay, what's 30 pounds over 12 months? What's that over the weeks? What are some support groups? For example, Weight Watchers or Jenny Cribb. Who are some other people who've done that I could have as mentors who've lost that? Like, then you start to put into practice that whole regime of breaking it down into little bite-sized pieces and making it happen, right? So that's why the little blocks on it. Yeah, I've broken it down into little pieces. So if you're optioning the screenplay, just think about optioning the screenplay. Let's not worry about anything yet. Just get that piece done. I'm not saying you don't have to think ahead and meet salespeople now and talk to salespeople now and, you know, and plan for things. But but focus on one thing at a time, just in a little piece. And all of a sudden, that 16 to 18 months of making that from beginning to end becomes easy and effortless and fun as it should be.
Definitely, and it would be very enjoyable as well to have it broken down by chunks as opposed to thinking of it as a big overwhelming thing at once.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. One is a little bit on a little bit of a darker side, but yet at the same time, and then the other one is dealing with also looking towards the future. With the first one being a little bit on the darker side of that, it's like there's been recent reports that have come out, different articles and stuff like that, talking about the differences between women and men in the terms of the industry for salaries, in terms of getting things on screens and stuff like that, and the shifts that are going on in the industry. I'd love if you have any insights into that, and where do you think that it's heading, or do you think that it's like, well, it's kind of the yes, we've seen this problem, but yeah, it's kind of the acceptance of a problem, or we're evolving the problem?
Here's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Every ability, if you haven't seen it, well, actually, I don't know if it's available on DVD yet. Oh my God, it's so good. And it's all about how are people with disabilities represented in films. And, because what can happen is when people that are represented in films and people are directing or acting or producing or whatever that are diversities and disabilities, it changes the world's image of those people. I was just saying, one of the comments that I made on the movie was just look at how I was brought up with, in the 1960s and 50s with the kind of television we had. Even when you looked at African Americans back then in those TV shows, it was so degrading and so, it must have been humiliating. And how that paradigm shift changed over those years, where now, I mean, it's just so different. I mean, so different. And there were some major shows in the 70s that had that happen, obviously, with the Jeffersons and all kinds of phenomenal shows that shifted it, where you don't even think twice anymore in terms of way that back then. People probably wouldn't even believe me if I tried to explain the shows from the 70s. I'm sorry, the 50s and 60s and 40s to them, or the old radio plays. Look at the Jack Benny radio play. Oh my God. Anyways, so those shifts in paradigms take time. They take time, and no amount of resistance and no amount of fighting is going to change that. I think. I find resistance creates resistance. Fighting creates more fighting. I've never looked at it like a hill. I know that there's that in one of the organizations I belonged to years ago. There was the rock going up the hill, and I've never bought into that one. I don't think we have to do that. I think if we just stop talking about it and just take actions, and it will automatically. Look at Japan. When I was little, when I was in the 50s and 60s, when you bought a Japanese product, it would fall apart within 5 minutes, and it only cost 5 cents. You're probably too young to remember, but it was, they were cheap products. You thought of the Japanese products as cheap and throwawayable, They didn't. I mean, what they did is they said, okay, we are going to take on creating a huge shift. When they did their set their goals for their companies, here we barely set goals for companies. When we do, it God forbid it should be 12 months. They would do 400 years. 400 years. Those people aren't even alive then, right? But they would they became, kind of their whole conversation was, how do we alter this whole conversation, right, of who we are and the kind of products that we're performing. Then within, probably 30 years, I mean, like I said, it takes time. It's not overnight. Any paradigm shift takes time. I'm not saying don't stand for something. Of course you stand for it, and then you take actions. It's like with Kate and I mean, we had people saying, you girls are crazy. back then. Your first movies, your first sets of movies are going to be in the millions. Who do you think you are? This is a man's world. Like, I was the first VP female in Atlantic, Canada, in a television station where, the press club in one of the other stations close by in the town, it was called the men's press club. That was the big sign on the door, the press club. I had gone to the university in school for 7 years, and I couldn't get in without my boyfriend at the time, who had grade 12, to sign me in. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's not long ago, and my boss at the time said, my first day on the job said, Suzanne, you're a female, you're a woman, so therefore you're stupid, and you belong in the kitchen, and I will do everything in my power to put you there. Wow. Now, either he was very chauvinistic or he'd never tasted my cooking. I don't know. But he expected that that's where I should be. Upstairs. Anyways, sorry, we've got some people coming and going out in the office here. So I remember at the time, it really affected me because I took it personally, and I got advice from people. I didn't get coaching. I didn't know about coaches at the time. I got advice, which is always the wrong thing to do. And one person said, you got to fight. And, I think one way to do that is, sue the company, because he continued for months to be, very, very abusive, as did all the other men, by the way. They were all men. They said he took a pact to not speak to me for months. And then one of the guys who I was now his boss, I went from the day before being one of his best friends, now the boss, he came in that morning and threw the work on my desk and said, you want this work done? You do it yourself. I was getting it from all the different areas. 1985, not very long ago, Scary.
Wow.
And so I said, okay, and then I got somebody else's advice, and one of the VPs of sales at the time, and he said, what you need to do is you need to learn to manipulate. Like when you're talking to somebody, get off your seat, go and sit on the desk, and sit on top on your desk so that you're looking down on them. And I remember after I left the offices of these people, these very bright people, I remember going, something's wrong here. Something's wrong here. I'm not feeling that I want to do that. That's not the right direction to go. Suing somebody, making somebody disempowered, making someone wrong, fighting, resisting. I don't know if this is answering your question, but I just had a feeling that that there was nothing good to come from that. So what I did is I had to once again look over here, is given I'm in a position where I can create a great possibility for other people and other women in this building and in this industry, than the television industry in Canada. What can I do that's going to make people right, make people feel empowered? I know I'm not capable yet. I knew that in my heart. I was brought up at the time to be sweet, be sweet and smile and don't laugh too loudly and don't talk too loudly and try to whisper more if you can. That's the way women, that's our culture. And it wasn't working. It didn't work as a VP. But also the reverse side didn't work either. To disempower. So I took an assertiveness training program. I took a stress management clinic. I hired my doctor who studied psychology. I kind of got some work from him on cognitive training. I read books on, on what causes the thinking that we have, and are our beliefs really ours, or where did they come from, and how can I change those pathways in the brain to create new beliefs that are more empowering, and so on. And I did some amazing programs during those next 8 months. While I lost, I think, 20 pounds and I didn't have any to lose, while I became very ill, I continued to look at mastering me. How do I get stronger? How can I get more powerful? Because every time I would walk up to his office, those 3 flights of stairs, I would start fine, take a deep breath, and I can do this, I can go up and make the request that somebody had asked for, one of my staff. By the time I got into his office and I sat in that seat, that would feel like a big seat, I felt like a little tiny person, who I felt like a pea on a big giant chair, and my voice would come out squeaky because it had all constricted by the time I got there. You know what I mean? And I thought, that's not okay.
Yeah.
How can I, as a woman, be a stand for other women? So for those 8 months, I just took courses on how do I empower myself to then empower others. And by the end of that time, it was the most remarkable relationship. We became so close, I can't even tell you, my boss and I. He was just, oh my God. I mean, because I sat down with him at one point and I said, here's how that day that you talked to me that way, here's how it affected me. I realize now that 10 other people could have been standing in that lineup and all 10 would have heard it differently. But I took it personally, and here's how I reacted to it, So to get back to the answer, is I created the paradigm shift in myself through taking action to be a better vice president and get the job done. So I'm saying that, yes, we need to be activists, of course. My God, yes. I mean, that's why I would love to be in that movie, Sinbility, and I love to support it. Gina Davis, she sponsored it the other night, and Gene Seymour was there. I mean, it was amazing. Everybody was so supporting of this movie. Yes, I'm saying we need to get it out there. I'm not saying we have to go into a cave, but get it out there, but with not resistance, but here are the changes we can make. Here's how everybody can have fun doing it. Here's what we can do to make it better, not through resistance, but creating a paradigm shift that is something that everybody can learn from and grow from and wants to get involved in. Nobody's going to do something when you tell them they have to do it. That's no fun. I'm going to probably do the opposite. We're all 8 years old or 14 probably when it comes back to being the throne identity, right? So of course I'm going to resist. No, how can we get in this game together? How can we get in this game together and be a stand for our commitment? And how can I enroll you into listening, into playing with me on that? As a female director, female producer, or somebody in a wheelchair, or somebody who's blind, or or whatever it happens to be. How can we get in this together? And it's changing. Here's the other thing too that I noticed is, I don't know if you've read Cheryl's book on Lean In. If you haven't, that's another one that's a must read, I would say. As a CEO of Facebook, she's been in, many meetings over the years with people around the world. And she noticed how women were not leaning in. They'd come to the boardroom table and sit back still, like we did in the 50s, when we were told to. We were not told to anymore, but we do it automatically. We lean back. And, we're still somewhat conditioned. So a lot conditioned. Look at our language alone is enabling sometimes, So so that book, incredible. So she hired my niece to come out and help with launching that foundation. And what I found interesting when I was watching my niece and Cheryl on YouTube is when they launched the whole thing in the summits, all the summits were geared to universities around the world. And I thought, how smart, because yes, we can teach old dog new tricks, yes, but why bother, at this point? Why not go to the people that are having the children next? Go to the 18 to 22-year-olds and have them look at that video, Like a Girl. I mean, if you haven't seen that YouTube, go and watch it. I cried all the way through. I thought it was so enlightening. In 2016, this video, Run Like a Girl, all you had to say was run like a girl, and you could see how they interpret it. So that's where the changes have to start to come. And that's why I said paradigms take time. They don't happen overnight. Because because that takes sometimes a different generation, sometimes that different thinking that takes time, because we've all are like cats on the screen door. We've all are holding on to our opinions like they mean something.
Yep.
God forbid, people will give up relationships to be right, Oh, I'm right. I have no friends, but by God, I'm right, So we're so cat on the screen door that it almost takes to loosen that, it maybe takes that next generation, in some cases, or it takes us standing really strong. I have a friend of mine who's a great filmmaker, an attorney as well. And I was talking to her the other day, and she still whispers. And I'm going, no, you don't get the right to do that. As a woman, I am taking away that right. I also was listening to a couple of girls at Foreman's at their pub here in Toluca Lake the other night. I swear to God, they had to have been 25. And it was so embarrassing that I only had one glass of wine, which is rare, and because I said I cannot bear to sit beside these two gals and my husband was so disgusted with them. He's a big supporter of women as well, and they were talking like you know how you keep saying like teenagers, like and then my boss like said like this, and then I was, oh my God Almighty. I said to my husband, I am going to stop them. I'm going to, because I feel, no, I didn't. He said, no, we're leaving, calm down. But in those cases, I do stand for what we've worked for. And my sisters above me who went through the 60s and all of what that entailed. And I just would have to say, you don't get the right to play that
dip card. Yeah.
You know, if you're not feeling strong enough, like this, we're playing a different game now. Get with the program. So, but I would not do it as a make wrong. That's what Jim said. You got to calm down because it would come out as a make wrong, right? And nothing is learned, nothing is gained by make wrongs. So I did, but I left. But it's kind of like that's almost what we need to say to each other, and we need to be honest with each other. And then I was at a writers, I spoke at the where did I speak? Sisters in Crime conference. It was fabulous. Oh my God, I met the most amazing women. And this one woman raised her hand and she was asking the panel, I live in this little town, in, I don't know, South Carolina, I forget where it was, some little tiny village town. I mean, my village, nobody's from a smaller village than I am in northern New Brunswick, but she said, I live in this little, village and whatever, and it's hard for me as a novelist, and how do I, get, and she was on and on about how impossible it would be to get her books, made into screenplays. And, and everybody was being so polite on the panel as it went down the panel, like almost sympathizing. Terrible word, terrible word. Don't ever use that word. Sympathizing is what they were doing. Oh, so disempowering. And so finally came to me and I said, I am so sorry. I can't help, but I'm not somebody who's nice when it comes to this. But I did it in such a way. I said, listen, is that conversation you're having with yourself empowering you? Are you feeling good when you get up at 5 a.m. to do your writing, knowing that this could turn into a screenplay? And, and the possibility. She said, no, because it never can. And didn't you hear me? I said, no, I didn't hear you because I'm not listening to that. And I don't think you should either. I think you should create a new conversation. So then let's look at what a new conversation could be. And then create the new conversation. So I think if we create the new conversation, like this is happening now, women are this now, the disabled are this now, the African Americans are this now. If we talk like this is happening now, I'm creating this now, I'm standing for this now with no make wrong to what's gone before and no make wrong to any of my older male partners who disagree, they have every right to be wherever they are. But I'm standing for this now. One person who is following that stream is worth more than 1 million who are in resistance. One person. Look at Gandhi. We've all seen that movie, and there's 1 billion people and you can't hear anything. And he was so standing in his commitment for the way it will be. And look at Martin Luther King, the way it will be, it's a given. Look at Kennedy, when he said, he didn't ask, when he said to the engineer, let's look at putting the man on the moon in 10 years.
Yeah.
And he said, and all he said was, what's it going to take to do so? And the engineer responded back, the will to do so. That's all. Yeah. And they did. There wasn't any, the mechanics weren't even available. The metal didn't even exist on planet Earth at that time.
That's because somebody was willing to stand up and do and make the change.
Yeah, and it's making that stand first, though. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do. No, just continue with the stand.
I have one of those sayings that I go, it's like you can either be part of the solution or part of the problem, but it's also you can also be the sheep. Just follow the problem.
Very good.
And let it continue. But it's like then it's just going to continue. It's not going to it's not going to manifest itself into a solution. It's like
Exactly.
you just continue to follow the problem, follow the problem. 10 years down the line, we're going to still hear the exact same thing and make it
Exactly.
so. I wanted one final question though, before that we close down this segment. Also, it's like I know that you are that your company's statement states also that you are being cutting edge in entertainment with emotional, psychological impact and vast like generating vast revenues and also having fun. What kind of projects is the future you wanting to take on?
That's a good question. I was actually looking at getting involved. I found a web series recently that I'm absolutely stunningly in love with. It's all about empowering young gals. It's so great. It's a teenage. It's fantastic, actually. So funny and so empowering. So we're working on that right now. St. Mark Rossman, the writer, director, producer that I just did Time Toys with, wonderful children's movie. So I'm working on that. It's a foreign world to me, that whole internet world, and it's all I can do to turn the computer on in the morning, and even then I celebrate, thank God, I'm good, I'm able to turn it on. It's like, wow, I'm brilliant. So it is a foreign territory, which I'm learning about. And that's, and then the other thing I'm looking at right now, we're doing a couple of bigger films and getting back into that world. But in terms of the cutting edge, it's basically, yes, that whole online thing that I'm learning more about, and the whole web series and web channels, and what does that all mean? I've kind of done some pitching at Awesomeness and Funlala and those kinds of places. So that's been, it's very new. In fact, those companies are very new. I think they're only a couple of years old. So it's such a new terrain, and I think very exciting, and creates so much more possibility, because it doesn't have to cost millions of dollars. It doesn't have to be an hour and a half. It can be 5 minutes. You can create some fun stuff. I'm going to have to shut the door. Just one second.
Yeah, it's like, it is also very interesting.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry. So that's so it's not all that cutting edge. Here's the reason I created the mission statement the way I did. And when we create a mission statement, you read apart from that mission statement, is it doesn't necessarily mean that it was happening then, right? It means that this is who I am, and this is the company that I'm having that's evolving. So that's how a mission statement's done. It's what I'm standing for. It doesn't mean it's all going to happen at the same time. And when Kate and I started, we started with the bigger movies and then the littler movies, and then also the other thing for me now is the internet, like I said, and web series, and then television. I have a different partner for television, and he and I have been out pitching sci-fi and other kinds of things right now too. So that's another arena that I'm looking at that I think it would be quite fun and have some really great projects in. So some of them are new. I wrote that mission statement, oh my God, it probably goes back to 2000, right? Maybe 1999. Mm-hmm. So it was about standing for, here's what's going to be unfolding, and let's start playing with that. So it's interesting you brought that up.
Well, yes.
Mm-hmm. That's it's what's out there, like the internet.
Yep. Because there's just so many opportunities. It's like, and just it's
Hello?
a really new. Hi, it's a really new, exciting field. It's really a lot of great opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I was asked to be the keynote speaker at an big online event recently, and I wasn't available. But I said to him, I want to get more involved, and I want to be one of your next, keynotes, because that's what his whole world is, this online.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he does. Lawrence is his name. Speaking from a different country. That's how technologically advanced he was compared to me. You know what I mean? I had no idea of half the words, what they even meant, half the words he was saying. So I said, I'm going to get myself ready to be the keynote for your next one, because I don't think I'm even there yet. Not that I was available, but I'm not even there yet. So I'm very excited about that, because he was trying to explain to me where things are going. My God, that's interesting. You read that part of it, because I hadn't thought of it. It's funny how sometimes, just by writing something like that, it starts to evolve on its own because you're putting it out there into the universe. You don't know exactly when you're getting it back, right? And yet here I was, and I said to Lawrence, "Why are you calling me?" And he said, "Well, my whole meetup group here," he said, "we're all, we read your book together and we're big fans of you and all of this stuff out here in Carolina." And he said, so we wanted you to come out. And I said, "But I know nothing about your world, so little." So interesting that you read that, because it's almost like maybe it's time. Maybe it's something that was put out there into the universe and now it's coming back, because it's time to get more familiar with this whole world of internets and computers and all of it, really. That's the direction it's all going. So we have to get smart. Even self-distribution. We don't even have to rely on sales agents to distribute our movies anymore. We can do it ourselves and keep 100% of the or 80% of the profit instead of giving the whole thing away,
Right.
It's amazing. Yeah. So it's a world we can't stay ignorant to it, so I'm glad you brought it up. So thank you for that reminder. And I didn't even realize when Lawrence called me 2 months ago that was probably a connection to that whole commitment that I had to move into that more cutting edge. Very cool.
You're quite
very
welcome.
Cool. Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, every once in a while we sneak across something good,
That was awesome.